You didn't choose this life. It chose you the way most dangerous things do, quietly, wrapped in something that looked like opportunity. You were 26. Broke in the way that doesn't just mean empty pockets. It means watching your mother count coins on the kitchen table at midnight. It means skipping meals and calling it a diet. It means smiling at people who have everything you don't, and pretending that's fine. You had a degree in political interpretation, Korean language, international relations, 2 years of graduate work you couldn't finish because the money ran out. You spoke the language almost fluently. Not perfect, but close enough. Close enough, it turns out, is all it takes. The email came on a Tuesday. No subject line. Just an address, a time, and 3 words. We noticed you. You should have deleted it. You almost did. But you were 3 months behind on rent, your girlfriend had stopped asking about the future, and something inside you, that quiet, starving part, needed to feel chosen by something. The address led you to a building in Brussels. 7th floor. A man in a gray suit offered you water you didn't touch and slid a folder across the table without introducing himself. Inside the folder was your entire life. Your grades. Your debts. A photograph of you at a conference you barely remembered attending. And at the bottom, a single sentence typed in clean black font. Asterisk North Korea needs people like you. And people like you need North Korea, asterisk. You laughed. Because what else do you do when the world cracks open in front of you? He didn't laugh. He just waited. And that patience, that cold, absolute patience, should have been your first warning. But you were hungry. And hungry people don't read warnings. They read menus. You didn't sign anything that day. That came later. Everything in this world comes later. First they let you want it. Then they make you ask for it. Then, once you've asked, they own the asking. The man in the gray suit, you eventually learned to call him Counselor Park, explained it the way a doctor explains a diagnosis. Calm. Clinical. Like your reaction was already accounted for. There was a program. Quiet. Officially it didn't exist. Western-educated analysts, language specialists, people with clean records and useful skills, brought in to help modernize certain communication systems within the DPRK's External Affairs Division. You wouldn't be inside the country at first. Liaison work. Translation. Cultural bridging. Geneva. Beijing. Sometimes Singapore. It sounded almost reasonable. That's the thing about traps built by intelligent people. They don't look like cages. They look like doors. You went home and told yourself you were just exploring it. You did research. Found nothing, because there was nothing to find. Asked a friend who worked in foreign policy. He went quiet in a way that told you everything and nothing at the same time. 3 weeks later you were on a flight to Beijing. They put you in an apartment that was too nice for someone who hadn't earned it yet. That's another technique you didn't recognize then. Comfort as a leash. Give a person a soft enough life and they'll protect it before they even realize they're protecting it. Your handler was a woman named Cho. Late 30s. Sharp eyes. Perfect posture. She smiled exactly as much as the situation required and never once more. She handed you a phone. Told you it was the only one you'd use from now on. You asked what happened to your old one. She said, you won't need it. Not you can keep it, not we'll return it later. You won't need it, asterisk. And somehow, in that moment, you nodded. Like that was a normal sentence. Like you hadn't just handed over the last thread connecting you to the person you used to be. Your first assignment was translation work. Speeches. Diplomatic memos. State correspondence that passed through channels so layered you never saw the beginning or the end. Just the middle. Just your small, clean section of something enormous and dark. But the work was interesting. Genuinely. That surprised you. You expected propaganda so blunt it would be almost funny. Instead you found something more unsettling. Sophisticated messaging. Carefully constructed narratives. Language designed not to convince the world, but to confuse it. To exhaust it. To make the truth so slippery that people eventually stopped reaching for it. You were good at this. That was the most dangerous discovery you made in those first months. Not that the system was dark. You expected dark. You didn't expect to be so useful inside it. Cho noticed. Of course she noticed. She noticed everything. One evening after a briefing she stayed behind and looked at you the way people look at something they're deciding whether to keep. She said, "They want to move you closer." You asked what that meant. She said, "Asterisk, it means you did well enough to be trusted. And trusted enough to be watched more carefully, asterisk. You should have felt afraid. Instead, quietly, shamefully, you felt proud." Closer meant Pyongyang. Nobody said it like it was a big thing. That was how they moved you through doors you could never reopen. Casually. Like it was just the next step. Like of course this was always where you were heading. The city hit you in a way you weren't prepared for. Not because it was what you expected. Because it wasn't. Wide empty boulevards. Enormous buildings with no warmth inside them. Monuments so large they stopped feeling like monuments and started feeling like threats. Everything clean. Everything still. Like a photograph of a city rather than a city itself. You were given a residence inside a compound. Small but private. A window that faced a courtyard where nobody ever sat. You ate meals that were better than what most people in that country would see in a month, and you knew that, and you ate anyway. That's when the first quiet erosion began. Not a dramatic moment. No single choice you could point to later. Just the slow, daily practice of ignoring what you saw outside the car window on the way to work. Learning to let your eyes go soft when they passed certain things. A woman pulling a cart alone. Children in uniform standing in formation before school. A man on a street corner staring at something that wasn't there. You learned to look without seeing. Everyone around you had already mastered it. The foreign liaisons. The local officials who worked alongside you. Even Cho, who you were beginning to understand was not just a handler but a gatekeeper for something much higher up. Your work shifted. Less translation. More strategy. They wanted to know how Western media would respond to specific statements. What language triggered sympathy internationally? What phrasing made sanctions harder to justify? You were essentially teaching them how the outside world thought, so they could move inside that thinking without being seen. You told yourself it was just analysis. Analysis is a clean word. It keeps your hands feeling empty. Then came the first briefing where you sat in the same room as people you recognized from intelligence reports you'd read in graduate school. Faces attached to decisions that had consequences you didn't want to calculate. You sat at the table. You contributed. You were thanked by name. After that meeting, a senior official, a man named Ri, who carried silence around him like a physical object, stopped beside you in the corridor. He said, "The general has heard your name." That was all. He kept walking. You stood there in that corridor for longer than you should have. The fluorescent light humming above you. The air too still. Your own heartbeat suddenly something you were aware of. The general. In this country that phrase didn't need a name attached. There was only one direction power moved here, and it moved from one place, and that place had just become aware that you existed. You called your mother that night for the first time in 2 months. They monitored calls, you knew that, so you kept it light. She asked when you were coming home. You said soon, the way people say soon when they've stopped believing in it. After you hung up, you sat in the dark for a while. Not because you were sad. Because you were realizing, slowly, the way you realize something you already knew but refused to name, that you weren't sure who would be coming home even if you did. The person who'd landed in Pyongyang 3 months ago was already someone different from the one who'd walked into that building in Brussels. And whoever was coming next would be different still. Power has a smell. Not metaphorically. Literally. It smells like a specific cologne worn by men who never wait in lines. Like leather chairs in rooms with no windows. Like food that arrives without you ordering it because someone already knew what you wanted before you did. You started to recognize it. And then, without noticing the exact moment it happened, you started to want it. Your access expanded in ways that weren't announced. One day there was simply a new door you were allowed through. A new floor in a building you'd been entering for months. A new face across a table who spoke to you directly instead of through an intermediary. Each expansion felt like a gift. You didn't ask what it cost because the system was designed so that the invoice arrived much later, always after you'd already spent everything. You had been inside the country for 8 months when you first saw him. Not in person. Not yet. On a screen, during a closed briefing. Footage from an internal ceremony. Kim Jong-un moving through a room of people who trembled slightly even while they smiled. The specific body language of people performing loyalty so hard it had become indistinguishable from actual feeling. You watched the way he paused beside certain people. The way a look from him made grown men adjust their entire posture. The way the room's emotional temperature was entirely controlled by where his attention landed. You thought, clinically, that you were observing a psychological phenomenon. What you didn't realize was that you were being prepared for proximity to it. 3 weeks later Cho came to your residence at 6 in the morning. She was dressed more formally than usual. She told you to wear the dark suit. The good one. You asked where you were going. She said, "You've been requested." The room they brought you to was smaller than you imagined. That was the first surprise. You'd built it up into something vast inside your mind. But power, real power, doesn't need large rooms. It fills whatever space it's in and still has some left over. He was shorter than the footage suggested. Heavier. His eyes moved across you the way someone reads a document they've already been briefed on. You were not a person to him in that moment. You were a file that had been given legs. Through the interpreter, though he likely needed one less than he performed, he asked you a single question. Do you believe in the work you do here? Every cell in your body understood that this was not a question. It was a mirror held up to see what kind of person looked back. You said yes. Not because you were afraid. Although you were. But because somewhere in the previous 8 months the answer had quietly, horrifyingly, become partially true. He nodded once. Said something to the man beside him. And then his attention moved on, the way sunlight moves, indifferent to what it leaves in shadow. Outside the room your hands were trembling. Cho looked at them and said nothing. On the drive back you stared out the window at the city moving past. The same wide boulevards. The same impossible stillness. But something had shifted in the way you saw it. You had been seen by the center of this world. And being seen by something that powerful does something to a person. It makes you feel real in a way that is completely false. That night you sat with a glass of something expensive they'd left in your residence and you thought about your girlfriend back home. You realized you hadn't thought about her in 11 days. Not forgotten exactly. More like filed away. Placed in a drawer labeled before that you'd stopped opening because everything inside it made the current version of you feel like a stranger wearing a familiar face. You were being given more. More access. More weight at the table. More of that cologne and leather chair power that had started to feel, God help you, like oxygen. But the cost was arriving now. Right on schedule. You just weren't reading the invoice. Your mother called. You let it ring. Told yourself you'd call back tomorrow. Tomorrow became a word that meant never without the guilt of never. A colleague, a German analyst who'd been there longer than you, stopped you one evening in the corridor. He looked at you the way someone looks at a person standing too close to an edge. He said, "They like you. Be careful what that means, asterisk." You almost asked him what he meant. But you already knew. And knowing without admitting is the most dangerous place a person can live. Because one morning you woke up, looked in the bathroom mirror, and practiced your expression. Neutral. Composed. Unreadable. The face you wore in briefings. The face that had stopped being a performance and started being the only one you had left. You stood there looking at yourself for a long time. And the person looking back didn't look lost. That was the part that should have terrified you. They looked like they belonged here.